Not for Nothing, name of the podcast. Welcome to the Not for Nothing podcast. This is going to be a little different. It's my good friend Jeremy Tinder, and Jeremy is usually the guy behind the camera.
For good reason.
Yeah, face made for radio,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And went over to his house the other day, and we were sitting around talking, and we ended up talking for like an hour. And I realized Jeremy's got some great perspective and opinions on things. And it was a great conversation, and I had the thought about midway through that, God damn it, I wish we'd been rolling.
Yeah.
So now we're going to roll.
Sounds good to me.
So I usually have people, beginning of the podcast, just let everybody know how we know each other.
Sure.
And how you came to be sitting in that seat.
Well, started a few years ago. I got a call from a mutual friend of ours, Derek Smith, asked me if I wanted to be in a movie. And, of course, it was sort of caught me off guard. And he says, "Can we film it in your basement?" I said, "Well, what kind of movie is this, first off?"
Yeah.
So I ended up saying, yeah, it was one of his short films. It was a lot of fun. I met you and several of the other people in the local film scene that day. And I got the bug for it, and being as that I had the bug for it, I had the opportunity to be on set with you more often, get to know you, and here we are. We're doing things.
And turns out we live like 5 blocks away from each other.
Yeah. I could stumble home if I had to.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I have.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first off,
Invite me on the show just to whoop me, huh?
No. Me and my wife been playing a ton of chess. It's a great game. It's analogous to life. Chess stimulates the same part of my brain as jiu-jitsu or combat sports in general, and I think that's very interesting.
Less bruises.
Yeah, you ain't kidding. So interesting. We're setting up for this, and I get a text from a girl, and this is about the third time this has happened. She said, "Hey, my 12-year-old son is getting bullied at school, and the school ain't doing shit."
Imagine that.
So I guess we're going to teach him how to fight. Do you do that?
Absolutely. In my personal opinion, and I've got 2 daughters, both of them, 20 and 18 now, so they're out of school, but they both dealt with bullying in school, and the schools were, you go in there and there's anti-bullying posters and
zero tolerance.
And they put out all these feel-good notions that they are anti-bullying, and when it comes down to it, they don't do anything on their side to stop bullying at all. It comes to the point where I taught both of my kids how to defend themselves and told them if they had to, then by all means defend yourselves.
So do you still teach self-defense at MMA? My son is getting bullied and would like to teach him how to stick up for himself. School isn't doing anything.
They won't. And the important thing is with kids in of varying ages is that they have to know the importance of self-defense versus bullying themselves.
Yep.
That's very important for a kid to learn. But a kid, in my opinion, has every right to defend themselves if there's nobody else there to stick up for them.
Yeah.
They have to be able to do it themselves.
Yep.
And I can tell you, even growing up through, the 80s, obviously I'm an older dog, where we used to fight after school and that, which I don't think they do that quite like we used to. But, once you stand up for yourself, chances are they're not going to mess with you again. Even if you don't, if you don't lay them out, that punch to the nose stings quite a bit, and it's a healthy reminder that this is an animal I don't want to tug on anymore.
So, I dealt with bullying a little bit. I'm not a very big guy with a gigantic mouth. So yeah, I dealt with that a bit growing up, and I learned a couple of things. And it's funny, I'm training a 14-year-old kid right now, boy, who his mother got him involved with me because of this. Like, it's funny, I said to Sabrina a little while ago, I was like, boy, you know, this is the third or fourth time I've been approached about this, you know. So to your point, bullies don't want to fight.
No, they just want to look big.
Bullies want to impose their will on somebody that's just going to take it.
Yep.
And, you know, yeah, you're 100% right. You know, punch a bully in the mouth or stand up to him even.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, predators don't fight predators in the in the wild. That's not how that works. So generally, particularly, you know, we're a first world country. We live in a fairly wealthy state. Even the poorest among us are reasonably, you know, financially okay. My point simply is that most people around here, or even in general, if you know, stand up to them, tell them no, and they're just gonna, guess what, now you're friends. And your other point, which I thought was great, some of my best friends are people that I fought in the schoolyard.
Yeah.
Growing up, were kids that, you know, bullied me or I bullied. You know, I wasn't always perfect.
All right.
But yeah, you know, and then you go out in the schoolyard and you fight it out, and then you're cool after that, and that doesn't exist anymore.
It doesn't.
And what makes it worse, you know,
you're right. Cyberbullying is a totally different animal. It affects a kid's psyche. It affects their ability to, perform in school. Because if they're constantly worried about, you know, it used to be, for us, and I'd had bullies in the past, I would worry about going to school.
Yeah.
But now, even coming home is not sanctity. It's not. They don't feel safe at home because they can still get, these kids harassing them and bullying them online.
Yeah, it blows my mind.
It's horrible.
Because I remember, you know, being like, you got to be kidding me. I got to deal with Steve, third period. You know what I mean? And like, that was Steve, third period. It was Jim. And, you know, but yeah, that was the extent of my worry. And maybe that extended to after school. You know,
and to walk home.
Right.
Yeah.
Funny.
Yep.
Yeah, I was talking with my mom the other day, and we were trying to figure out how old I was when I went to a particular babysitter's house. And my barometer for being able to remember it was I fought Steve Gurn behind the quick stop in 4th grade.
Yep.
And then I remember that after he whooped my ass, I went back home to my grandmother's, so I wasn't staying with the babysitter at that point. But yeah, my point simply being, like, I can't imagine what it's like to be cyberbullied, to constantly, no matter what, be able to have somebody have access to you.
There's no sanctity there. They don't feel safe ever.
No, it's crazy.
It is. It's horrible. And it's so easy for these kids to do. There's no repercussions for their actions online. You know, like, you know, you say, when we were growing up, you know, we met in the quick stop parking lot after work, or the church parking lot after work, and we duked it out. And that was the end of it. In 99% of the cases, that was the end of it, because, you know, nobody wants to fight. I mean, but there was a repercussion for you saying what you said. You know, you got that pop in the mouth, or you wrestled down to the ground and you went rounds with somebody. But
win or lose, you had to answer for it.
Right.
Like, you had to, you had to cash that check that your mouth wrote.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's funny because you were saying kids. It's not just kids nowadays.
Right.
You know, people say stuff online that they wouldn't say in person. Like,
full-grown adults.
I make an effort to actually think about that before I post something. Like, would I say this if this person was standing in front of me? And for the most part, I really would. And I don't think everybody uses that particular barometer as it relates to what they're willing to, to post and not post.
Agreed. And I think those are the guys that never got punched in the mouth when they were younger either.
Well, or did, and now they're
safe behind their computer.
yeah, yep.
You know, and that's human decency goes a long way. Whether you're in front of somebody or you're online with somebody, you don't have to be a nasty person just to be a nasty person. And you know, they always said words hurt. It's true, they do to one degree or another. And there are people out there that are pretty fragile, and you really have to, you know, go at them with kid gloves, even though they don't have that filter, and they'll say some of the nastiest things that they could possibly say to you. Somebody has to be a responsible party.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So yeah, I actually thought about it, kind of like shot through my head when I got this message. I want to potentially teach a class for anti-bullying. Because, and it's funny too, so little of bullying I feel, I mean, you know, ultimately the culmination of it could be something physical, right? But there are certain facets of it that can be addressed that don't require physicality. Eye contact. Predators don't attack predators. I had said that earlier. And part of what identifies somebody as a predator is how they carry themselves, their willingness for eye contact, things like that,
Right.
that I feel like a kid could be taught relatively easily, relatively young. You know, she said the kid's 12 years old and has no confidence whatsoever.
There's the key.
You know, like anything in life, you fake it till you make it. I mean, we're doing it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and I do think that there's a lot that a child can be taught as it relates to standing up for themselves and how to thwart a bully that doesn't have anything to do with throwing a hook.
Right.
You know, and I think that's where I'm going to start. The other thing I do is I tell everybody that I train, but particularly kids, like, don't let me find out
Yep.
that you're bullying somebody or that you're using your superpower for evil. Like, the thing that I am teaching you comes with a lot of power. And Spider-Man said it best, you know, with great power comes great responsibility.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so.
Well, and I think that's a great thing. And I grew up, my dad was into martial arts my whole life. I grew up, as soon as I could throw a kick or a punch, I was out in the garage training with him in his gym. I took taekwondo for probably 12 years.
Wow.
But one thing that absolutely, even though I learned how to fight, I still didn't want to fight necessarily. But I had the confidence in knowing that I could defend myself if need be. And I think, like you say, the confidence goes a long way,
Yep.
especially with a kid, because they're not too sure. Most kids are not too sure of anything that they know or can have the ability to do. So if they have the confidence to at least stand up for themselves, it may never even come to blows.
Yep.
So-
I agree with you 100%, and I think that's a massive part of it. As a 40, wow, I'm 48. As a 48-year-old, oh, so are you, right?
49.
49, but we're same year, right?
Yep,
76, yeah. As a 48-year-old adult, I firmly believe that violence is not the answer,
Sometimes it is.
but it's always an option.
Well, and that's just it.
Yeah.
You know, it sounds awful damn cocky to say sometimes violence is the answer. You know, I think that there are certain situations that it's the only answer. I think you know, especially if you're talking about a domestic situation or something like that, violence may be the only thing that keeps you alive in an instance like that. You have to be able to make a judgment to cross over that line, but that might be the only choice. That might be the only option. So I can't say personally that violence is, you know, not the option or never the option, because sometimes it really is.
All right, I made that up. Yeah. You know what? I think a better way for me, I'll speak for, I wish violence was never the answer. I really do.
Yeah,
like,
I can agree.
I don't want to get hurt, and I don't want to hurt anybody.
Yeah.
You know, and I firmly believe that push comes to shove, or if it's you or it's me, it's you.
Yeah,
I don't know what to tell you. You know, and God forbid it's you know, you or my family or my close friends. Fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Like it's not a discussion really at that point. Yeah, I also think that, and I know this for myself, and I'm sure you can relate, when you're dealing with young men, you know, when you're dealing with teenage boys or even prepubescent, 12 years old, whatever, sometimes, you know, that's what they understand.
Right.
I don't know what to tell you. I remember being that age, and for a period of time, during that time, my mom, you know, my father had died when I was young, and then my stepfather came into the picture somewhat later. But there was a period of time where there was no real male influence, and my mom either wouldn't or couldn't kick the shit out of me.
Right.
So I didn't care. Like, I wasn't worried.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Do
And then my
whatever you wanted.
stepfather came into the picture, and I remember running my mouth to my mom at some point, and he didn't even yell, nothing. Come here. Come here. You yell at your mother like that again, and I'm going to smack the shit out of you. Do you understand? Yes, sir.
Yep.
I understand. You know.
And sometimes that's all it takes.
Yeah.
But again, you know, I mean, you're talking about adolescent children in most cases, and they don't have a firm grasp on reality or pain, to be honest with you. You know, most of them. And you know, my dad was a great guy. He was a very violent individual, and you know, all my friends knew it. You know, they all knew my dad is the guy that you did not fuck with. It was he didn't care who you were. He would snatch you up. You know, I watched him fight people in the streets, you know, on a whim, you know, on more than one occasion. And that was just the way my dad was raised. He was raised in sort of a broken home. My mom, she was pretty level-headed. She grew up in a well-structured home. She was not a violent person. She didn't condone violence. But there wasn't anything she could do about my dad's violence to a point, you know. And again, you know, it wasn't, he didn't go out looking for trouble, but he didn't have any problem solving issues that were in front of him with violence. I watched him bread and butter a guy down the street. Well, this guy whipped his shit out and, you know, flashed it at my dad, and my dad snatched him up by his neck. And my dad's probably of your stature, you know, he's not a real big guy. This guy was pushing 300 pounds, 6'4", you know, and my dad grabbed him by the collar and backhanded him and forehanded him all the way down the sidewalk in front of me and all my siblings and all the kids on the block. That guy never came back. But, you know, I mean, at that point it's justified. That's sometimes violence is needed. You know, when you're talking about an unstable individual like that, his first reaction is to hit him.
Sure, and it goes back to, if you're dealing with somebody, whether it's that guy or it's another 11 or 12-year-old kid that you can't reason with, that you can't explain why this is wrong, who can't internalize, like, you know, as an adult right now, I have a pretty clearly defined sense of what's right and wrong. I have a pretty clearly defined sense of empathy, pretty clearly defined sense of not wanting to cause, you know, maybe, you know, this behavior will cause this feeling in another person. I don't want to do that.
Right.
You know, and I've been hurt physically myself. I don't want to do that to somebody else. I feel like that, you know, for younger kids just entering into, you know, their teenage years, they don't have any of those frames of reference because they haven't experienced it. So to explain it to them, no, doesn't really work. You know what works? A good stiff pop in the mouth often. Have you ever, it's funny because we're talking about like when we were kids and how things were different. I remember when given a certain set of circumstance, your friend's parents could whoop your ass.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like you could get cuffed or smacked or, you know, dragged through the yard or whatever it was by somebody that wasn't your parents, but they were like pseudo parents, and it was cool. And what you hoped is that they didn't tell your parents. Like, you know, nowadays, kid would run home, you know, Joey's dad slapped me. When I was a kid, Joey's dad probably slapped me because I said something, said or did something stupid. And I just prayed that Joey's dad didn't tell my parents, because then I get smacked twice for it.
Yes.
And, you know, never an advocate, obviously, of abusing children or anybody for that matter, but I had a prison guard, D.I. Haynes was his name. And he said one of the smartest things I've ever heard. He said, pain is a wonderful teacher.
It is.
And, you know, I do think that, like most things in society and culture, the pendulum has swung quite a bit in the direction that is not, you know, good for developing people in general. And again, not an advocate of beating a child.
Sure.
You know what I mean? But I don't see any. I remember sitting with a girlfriend I had when I was a freshman in high school, and her parents were great, right? And we're sitting at the dinner table, and she said something just completely off the cuff, and her dad leaned over and just popped her, and then looked at me, and
I didn't see nothing.
No, sir. But yeah, that was completely warranted.
And to that point, yes. I mean, we had pseudo parents. If we were at their house,
Yep.
we were their responsibility, and we got dealt with how they saw fit. And that was perfectly okay with our parents because they did the same to our friends coming over. I remember even first grade. Again, I don't condone corporal punishment either, but it happened, and I learned from it. You know, I had a teacher that would whack you with the yardstick or the ruler across the knuckles. You know,
Yeah.
I remember lining up with 3 or 4 of my friends in the hallway at school because we were out cutting up on the school ground, and she didn't like what we were doing, so she pulled us out of class, and she made every one of us take a shot across the knuckles.
So do you remember it was a male teacher, guaranteed, who every male in your class didn't want to get in a fight because that guy would break it up, and he would back of the neck little puppy dog your ass down to the principal's office.
Yep, my 7th grade PE teacher.
That's funny. Yep. Like we all got one,
Yep.
and I do think it's funny, we're talking corporal punishment. So I'm not a fan of physical punishment if it's like, okay, you get in trouble at school and you come home and your mother is like, all right, well, go wait out back for your father. It's like premeditated, and there's a certain calculation to that doesn't sit well with me.
Right. Plus, that's one of the scariest things you could ever hear as a kid.
Yeah, you know, wait till your father gets
Yep.
home. I do think though that, and I always go back to that dinner. Nancy Finari was my high school girlfriend at that time, and yeah, I always go back to her dad leaning across and just a corrective pop, and I hate to make the analogy of like dogs to children, but when you come home and your dog has chewed up your favorite pair of shoes, you don't spank him. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
You don't really do anything because enough time has elapsed where it doesn't matter.
Right.
Now, I round the corner in the kitchen and I see him with that shoe. I'm going to take it. I'm going to bop him on the snout.
Yep.
And that's corrective. And I know anybody watching, you're going to find 500 studies that say that smacking your kid in the mouth is a bad thing.
Well, and I hate to keep saying it over and over, but we grew up in a different time. We were pretty much feral. I mean, we were the kids of a generation that didn't have parents around, at least one of the parents around all the time.
Right.
We had to let ourselves in and out before and after school, depending on where your parents worked and what they did. But when we were out running the streets, they expected a certain level of personal responsibility from us. And I guess that was their way of teaching us, hey, here's the consequences to what your actions, could be, So if you're catching this lesson at home, it's better than some stranger delivering it to you on the streets. Again, my personal opinion, but kids that I grew up with, they were wild, man. They were absolutely wild kids, and kids these days, they don't act the same way that kids I grew up with. And I'm not saying I'm not saying that is a bad thing or a good thing necessarily, but there were corrective measures that had to be taken with us as a generation as opposed to kids these days. Now you can take away their phone, you can take away their PlayStation, and it's the end of the world. You couldn't take shit away from us. Except a little bit of happiness and maybe forward a little pain on your ass, but
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that. Grounding when I was a kid was I had incredibly limited television privileges. As a kid, the only video game system I ever had was the original Nintendo in '91. I had it for 2 months, and I got a B on my report card, and it got yanked. And I haven't played a video game since.
Yeah. And you know what? So what? We didn't play video games back then. We did, but that wasn't our life.
Right.
You know, I mean, you look at these kids, you know, and even my youngest, even my oldest, they get into gaming. Everybody games. It's an online community. It's something that's completely foreign to me because growing up, when I got up, I was outside. I was gone.
Yep.
I jumped on my bike and I looked for wherever all the bikes were in the yard, and that's where we were. That's where all my friends were.
Same.
You know, I see some of these messages or hear my kids talking when they were younger to some of their friends. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? No, we just went. We just went and did. You know, we weren't indecisive. We knew that we didn't want to be in the house.
Well, it's not even just what's crazy to me is you bring up the phone. Like, I didn't call anybody. I stopped at Justin's house. If he wasn't home, I stopped over at Hans and Robin's place.
Yep.
You know, if they weren't there, I hit up Anthony Fleming, or I biked around until funny I saw there's everybody.
Yep. There's all the
you
bikes.
know, or they were in, you know, they were at the park, or they were somewhere, and it didn't. I had a variety of friends that throughout the course of my childhood I didn't knock.
Yeah.
When I came to their house, like I just, hey, what's up? You know, almost like a sitcom.
Yep.
When you think about it now.
Well, yeah, that's exactly it. And it goes back to the pseudo parenting. You know, the parents, they let you walk right on in.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the first adult, I guess, gifts I ever got was a wristwatch. Yep. It was a Mickey Mouse watch. I was pretty young. But yeah, and that was simply because, to your earlier point, you know, there was none of this unbelievable helicopter parenting that we see nowadays, where everybody just hovers, and the worst part is it's hovering without direction.
Yeah.
Like, at least when I was a kid, if my mom happened to be around and saw me fucking something up, she'd be like, hey, stupid.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
You know, and now what we have is many of these parents are doing with their kids. They're constantly observing. Like I said, I got a watch. You know, that's so I could be home in 8 hours at 11 years old. And I don't think that exists.
Yeah, not at that age anymore.
You know, I've heard a lot. I want to write a short film where it's, you know, one of us at our age, and we have a kid who's like 11 or 12, and we're constantly disappointed this kid doesn't get in any trouble. You know what I mean? We leave our wallet out with like the littlest bit of a doobie poking out, hoping they'll steal it, because I used to steal my stepfather's weed.
Yep.
You know, maybe like a little doobie and like a $20 bill. Like, come on.
Yeah.
You know, we allow the kid to have a basement bedroom in the hopes that they'll sneak out.
Yep.
You know, we leave our car keys where they can find them, so if they sneak out, they can have a ride.
Yeah.
Like, you know, all these things that like
we did.
that I was just talking to my mom the other day. I snuck out when I was like 14, stole a car, hung out with my buddies, came home absolutely in terrible shape, and what she had done is locked the door so I couldn't get in.
You know, it's hilarious that you say that, because I was just thinking about this the other day. I had a basement room, right? So far as I had my own bathroom and shower down there. I was completely, you know, I'm 15, 16 years old when this is happening. But I had my own door. I could come and go as I pleased, you know, and this door was super quiet, you know, so I could sneak out. You know, I remember one night there was this girl that was going to be over at this house, and, you know, my parents were like, no, you're going to stay home tonight. Well, I'm like, well, you go to bed. I'm not staying home tonight. So I snuck out, and I, you know, drink some beers, and I come back home. I sneak back down in there. I crawl into bed. I'm scot-free. They don't know shit. I get up in the morning, and there's goddamn flower footprints
Oh, no.
all the way from the door. My mom had flowered the stairs so she could see if I'd left, and my dumbass didn't see it because I was so focused on being quiet. I walked right through that flower and footprints right into my room. She knew damn well that I was gone.
That is brilliant.
Yep.
So she locks the door. We had a huge potted plant right outside the door. sat down in it, and went to sleep, right? I woke up like 1 millisecond before she connected.
Oh.
And just, yeah, over, wow. And that was it.
Yep.
Get inside. And yeah.
Well, you know.
So yeah, I guess my point was simply like I want to write something. You know, I have a fair amount of interaction with teenagers through, you know, mixed martial arts and boxing and things of that nature. And, you know, I've brought up like getting in trouble, and quite a lot of them are just no, I would never do that. What?
Yeah.
Like if there was a line, I was stepping over it. If there was a boundary, I was pushing it.
Right.
And yeah, I got in a little bit of trouble, you know, but I do think it makes for a somewhat more well-adjusted. It prepares you a little bit better for life.
Agreed.
Yeah.
100% agreed. And that's, you know, those those are lessons that are life lessons that you learn by going out and getting in trouble and cutting up, or, you know, stealing a little bit of your dad's stash. By doing that, I learned that you don't take another man's drugs. I found that out. But, you know, it's sort of, I don't even know how to describe it. Like, kids are sort of sheltered these days, or maybe they just have access to it. They don't need to take it from their parents or what have you, you know, certain instances. I guess you would think that, you know, that little bit of getting in trouble would stick around. You wouldn't think that would be a generational thing.
No, it and again, I mean, obviously, it's still if kids get in trouble and, you know, whatever, but yeah, I do think that I'm blaming everything on the internet. I don't know what to tell you.
I won't argue with
like I do think, you know, the internet's great. You know, anything that I want to know. I'm making a sourdough loaf that I want dried strawberries in, but I don't want freeze dried, which is what you get at the store. I want them kind of, you know.
Yep.
So I was able to look up how to do it.
Yep.
Anything you want, you can, you know, this great invention that could have, that has to a certain degree revolutionized human beings, and motherfuckers leave nasty comments on YouTube and watch porn. Like,
Yep. You have literally a wealth of knowledge
Yep.
in the palm of your hand these days, and you use it for shit.
Yep.
You use it for hurting people's feelings, or just, you know, otherwise porn. I mean.
So have you gotten, you know, everybody kind of gets like the trolling malware, or like the scamming email. So I don't know, it was like 8 months ago or so, I got an email, pretty extensive, pretty well done, but it was like, sir, you watch some fucked up porn, right? Yeah. And you forgot to shut your webcam off, and we reverse engineered it, and what we have is like an hour of you watching the worst porn you've ever seen and doing horrible things to yourself. And if you don't send us $500, we're going to release this to everybody that you know. You're not going to believe me. So I'm just going to preface with that. I don't watch porn.
I don't believe you, but
I don't.
You know, and there's nothing wrong with that.
So my point was, though, that like it was a great feeling to be like, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, no, you really don't. And I could see how the average person might have been like even recognized it as a scam, but still been like, fuck.
Fuck. A coworker of mine just went through that a few months ago. And
like the same phishing.
Yeah. We know what you've been watching.
Yeah.
We got you on camera.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, you know, if I would have got that email, and I can honestly tell you, if it was true, you guys would get some sick shit from me. And you know what? I don't care. I don't care. You know, I get to keep my money and have fun.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, from like the sexuality, don't fuck little kids and animals, and I don't give a fuck what you're into.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
You know, it's hard to believe that you have to say that. you know,